This is a demo of Rational Method Composer, or RMC, which is a tool for documenting methods or processes. So when you use Method Composer, you either select or create your own method content. You publish a website. Potentially and optionally you could configure Rational Team Concert to work with that website. And then the users who are complying with that process will follow it and ideally use Rational Team Concert as their tool to actually manage work and follow that process. And they give feedback, and then the authors make improvements to the process. The tool itself is an Eclipse client, and on the left-hand side we can see we've got a small number of authors who work with either the IBM Practices library, or they work with their own library or their own extensions to the IBM library, and they publish out to a website. They can also optionally create work item templates for Rational Team Concert, which can have links into that process website. And one thing you might observe is that there's a large number of users compared to authors. So we're going to start this demo by showing you the website, and then we're going to show you how users use Rational Team Concert in conjunction with that website, and then we'll start showing you how you would author processes with Method Composer. We're going to look at the CLM process, or the IBM Rational Solution for Collaborative Lifecycle Management. This is a process that describes how to do software development in a team of teams approach. The different teams involved are a project leadership team, a development team, an independent test team, and a deployment team. We can see on the left that we have a tree browser, which serves as a table of contents, and on the right is the page selected in that tree browser. So we'll start by looking at an example of a role. If I expand the roles project leadership team and I go to the product owner role, you see a typical page generated from Method Composer. It has a description of the role, has the tasks that the role performs, work products the role is responsible for, other activities that the role is involved in, and some information about staffing, skills, and assignment approaches. If I click on one of these tasks, such as Develop Technical Vision, I can see a typical task generated from Method Composer, which describes things like the role that performs the task, the other roles that might be involved in performing the task, possibly inputs, and outputs. In this case, the primary output of this is the vision. We can also see that there's steps for performing the task and some additional guidance and key considerations, checklists, and so forth. If I click on the vision work product, I can see a description of what a vision is. So we have the purpose of it, we can see what tasks it's involved in, we have a template for it. I can click on the vision template, and there's a Word document for that. And there's some guidance on tailoring as well as some checklists. Tasks are generally composed to create hierarchies of workflow or delivery processes, as we refer to them in Method Composer. We have a delivery process for each of these teams. If we look at, for example, independent testing team, I can expand that, and I can look at the workflow for the independent testing team. In this case, we've got a diagram that describes how the testing team is involved from iteration to iteration. We also see a table that gives the breakdown structure, telling me what happens in construction from iteration to iteration, and I can follow this decomposition downward. I can also do the same decomposition in the tree browser on the left, so I could expand this, so forth. And at any level I can click on the element and just see the breakdown structure below that element. So in this case I can look at test and evaluate. It has these breakdown elements including design test, and one of the tasks inside this is define test strategy. And here again we see a task, and we can see the inputs and outputs performing roles and the details of the steps, and we can expand each of these steps to get specific guidance on how to perform that step. Basically, customers have the choice of building their own processes using Method Composer, and they can build them from scratch, or they can start with IBM's practices library and build from there. So as you can see here, we have a number of enterprise practices. We have systems engineering practices. We have various software development practices covering everything from architecture practices through testing practices. So a very broad scope of content coverage provided. The content is separately licensed with content reader licenses, so if you're interested, you should contact your IBM sales representative to make sure you have sufficient licenses to use this content. But you can certainly browse it when you've installed Method Composer and decide whether it's suitable for your organization. Let's look at a specific practice. In this case, we're going to look at the independent testing practice. And we can see here that the independent testing practice has guidance for how to adopt the practice. It has a sample workflow, the test iteration template. It has artifacts, it has tasks, it has guidance. And we can decompose that either through the content references or by expanding things in the tree here on the left. Let's look at the test iteration template. Here we can see a description of the workflow. We have a diagram that was produced with Method Composer. So in addition to navigating via the tree browser or via the work breakdown structure at the bottom, we can navigate via the diagram as well. So to give an example of that, we can see that there's a test and evaluate here. And I can look at it here. I could also drill down to test and evaluate through this here, or I can drill down to the diagram by clicking here. All of those links will take me to a diagram that tells me how the workflow for test and evaluation occurs, and I can further work my way downward through this description. So this is just one example of the many practices within the IBM Practices Library. Now I'd like to demonstrate how you access process guidance from Rational Team Concert. In this task, we're going to create work items for a team that's developing an account management system for a fictional bank, JKE Bank. These work items will contain links to an RMC generated process website. So first thing we're going to do is log in here as Rebecca. And we're going to go to the JKE Account Management Program. This is a project area within Rational Team Concert. And within this area, we can create work items. So we're going to go to Work Items, and we're going to say Create from Template. And I'm presented with a list of work item templates. And note that these work item templates were created using RMC. I'm going to select the program increment template. And I'll set the file against to JKE Account Management. And plan it for program increment 1. And click Finish. So we've created several work items. We're going to look at one of these, the PI planning event. And this is a work item for planning the very first increment. If we scroll down, we can see there's a link here for process guidance. So I click on See Detailed Description. And this takes me to a page that was generated from Rational Method Composer. In this case, this is a website we posted on jazz.net. and tells you the roles that are involved, the inputs, the outputs, in this case the team PI and program PI objectives. And if we want details from the Scaled Agile Framework website, we can click here, or if we want tool-specific guidance on how to do this in Team Concert, we can click here. And just to show you, we'll click on that link, and here we can see the guidance from Scaled Agile Framework. And to see the tool-specific guidance, click here and we can see specific guidance on how to do things with Team Concert. If you want to see the complete Safe with the Power of IBM DevOps Process website, you can navigate to jazz.net Safe 4.5 Practices. You may notice that this website looks a little differently than the ones we've navigated before. There's no visible tree browser on the left-hand side, and instead the approach is to use the top nav bar to navigate. We can also bring back the tree browser if we want to, so we could actually look at the same information here just like we did with the other websites that we saw earlier. This is just one example of how the look and feel of a process website can be modified using RMC's Skins feature. So far we've been focusing on how users access process guidance. And next I want to show you how process authors create and publish content. So we're going to launch Rational Method Composer, and we'll create a new method library. And I'm going to put it into IBM My Library. The first thing we're going to do is create a new method plugin. So method plugins contain a set of method content. And we'll just create a blank one. And we'll call it Release Planning. Within a plugin you can organize content in terms of packages, and we'll just create one package and also call it Release Planning. Observe that as I typed the presentation name, that the name above was automatically generated. The presentation name is a name that's used in anything that gets published, whereas the internal name at the top, that one is used for reports and file names. So I'm going to save, and now I'm going to create a role. And I'll call this role Release Planner. And save. I'm going to create a new work product, specifically an artifact, and I'll call this Release Plan. Save. And I'll create a new task. And I'll call this one Plan the Release. Now a task is performed by roles, so I'll click on roles and I'll add an association from the task to the role that performs it. So the release planner is the primary performer for the task Plan the Release, and we want to produce an output from this task, which is the release plan. So to the outputs I will add the release plan. In order to actually produce a release plan, you actually have to do some work, and we'll describe the steps here in the steps area. So I'll add a step, and the first step I'll add is invite attendees. another step, book room. Now we can see that every time I'm adding a step, there's a description below, which is a rich text area. And I can bring up a rich text editor by clicking here, or I can just type in plain text. So to book a meeting room, use the internal portal, something like that. And I could, for the first step, I could add some details on, invite the key stakeholders, something like that, and save. I'm going to actually also modify the main description for the task. So I'll go to the main description tab, scroll down, and this is where I can provide an overview of the purpose and so forth of the task. I'm going to edit the main description. I'm going to click on this icon to open the full rich text editor. And I'm going to say that the release planner creates the release plan. And I'm going to show you how we can use drag and drop to create links. So I put the drag and release planner creates the release plan. And these are automatically hyperlinked. I'll save. I'm going to close the task. In fact, if I want to, I can close everything. I'm going to rename the role to Release Manager, and we'll observe that if I do that, the link will also change. So I've changed the presentation name to Release Manager. If I then reopen the task and look at the description that I created earlier, you'll observe it now says the Release Manager, not the Release Planner. We can click on the Preview tab to see the results of our work so far. And this generates a page that shows us what it will look like when it gets published. And we can see here that the task plan, the release, has the release manager as the primary performer, outputs the release plan, we have that text that we created, we have the steps, which are expandable, and that's it. Next, I want to show you the area map capability. So I'll go back into the main description, and I'm going to add a picture. And I'll add this AALM.jpg picture. And this is just an example of a diagram that we created for another process. Just want to show you that it can be any diagram from any source. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an area map using the far right hand icon. And what I can do is I can drag and drop onto this area map, or I can create specific links, and I can link to external references, or I can link to internal ones. The easiest way to create links would be to drag and drop. So I'll grab this release plan and I'll place it over top of this release backlog icon. Choose a rectangle, and I can place it and resize it so that becomes clickable. When we preview this again, you can see that there's a hotspot here. If I click on it, it brings me to the release plan. The next capability I plan to demonstrate is authoring of processes. So I'll show you how to create hierarchical breakdown structures with diagrams and explain the workflow and dependencies between the various activities and tasks. So I click on processes here, and I'm going to create a new capability pattern. Capability pattern term just simply means it's a part of a process, so it might describe how you do some small piece of a process. It isn't a complete end-to-end process. So I'll call the new one Project Management. And I'm going to click on the breakdown structure in order to add sub-elements. So the first thing I'm going to do is add a child or an activity. Notice you can add phases, iterations, I'm going to do just generic activities, and I'm going to call this one plan. And I'll create another one at the same level, new child, called monitor. And I have a task here to plan the release. I'm going to add that into the plan. And this is generally how you decompose things. So you create the hierarchy with activities, and then the tasks that you've defined earlier, you can place them wherever you want in the breakdown structure, and you can even have them appear multiple times within the breakdown structure. I'd also like to show you how we create diagrams. So right click on project management, open activity diagram. It'll say, do you want to create one? Yes, I do. It automatically populates it with the elements that I've created. And now all I have to do is suggest the sequencing between them. So I'll create a start node. I'll create an end node. And I'll sequence these as in this way. Control flow, plan first, and monitor, and then we're done. I'll save that. And I'll just close all these editors I have open. So we now have created some elements. We've got a role, a task, a work product. We have a process that describes how we do the work, although in reality we would want more tasks. Now I'm going to show how you create a process website out of this information. So the first thing you need is a view, which is the root of your table of contents for the tree browser. And those are referred to as custom categories. So I'll create a new custom category. And I'll simply call this one table of contents. As good a name as any. In order to add children to it, I click the Assign tab, and I assign what I want to have in it. And if I want to, I can add other elements. I could, put the task or the role or, what have you. Maybe I'll just put them all. So now I have a table of contents. What I'd like to do next is create the configuration, which tells me what elements out of the library I should be publishing. So I say here, right click, new, method configuration, my configuration. A little bit boring, but so be it. And I need to say, well, what elements in the library are relevant to publish, and I'm going to publish everything that I have, which is this one plugin, Release Planning. I could also select or deselect packages within plugins. You can also add categories of elements if you've got a grouping of elements you want to add or subtract. A lot of flexibility to determine what to include and what not to include. I need to say what I'm going to use as my table of contents, and I'll use that custom category I created as the view. I'm now done. I can now click Save, and I can close this. Now I'm going to publish that configuration. Configuration, publish, and I'll use HTML, my configuration. I'm going to publish everything until I get to the last one, in which case I'm going to choose static website, and I'll go with this default location and click Finish. And in my case, I've already got something there. I know that folder is safe to delete, so I click OK. The website comes up, and I can see the table of contents just like I had defined it. And I can navigate through the tree browser here, or I can click on the diagram and drill my way down eventually to the task, plan the release. And I see here the roles and outputs and inputs and steps. And I also see the hotspot that I created on the image map. This was just a brief overview of Rational Method Composer. You can visit us on the IBM Marketplace. You can see the URL here. I suggest clicking on Details and scrolling down, and you can either visit the product documentation, which is on online help, or go to our DeveloperWorks community. The DeveloperWorks community has all kinds of information on how to get started with the tool. It has guidance on installation, in-depth topics, covering all sorts of topics, as well as advanced RMC features, tips and tricks, and so forth. Thank you very much.